Making bait has to be one of the hardest tasks in the estuary. When I say hardest tasks, it's because you get torn between the two different sort of types of fishing that you want to do. You go into the estuary knowing that you've got a couple of bonnies as backup to go and fish in the sea, because ultimately we're going into fish in the sea to try and catch a big GT, maybe a big kuta, and it's nice to have some fresh pick-handle barracuda, greater barracuda, some young ones. So we'd go along knowing we've got the bonnies as backup just to catch a few of those, and you catch one and you catch another one, and then you know, well, you know, you've got enough for this afternoon or this morning. And but anyway, let's just catch another one just in case, and you do that. But while you're doing that, you suddenly hook something else, and then it turns into another little fishing expedition with just a whole lot of other different species thrown into it, and it becomes very difficult to leave. And you know you've got to be down at the beach, you know, within a certain period of time, because we know what the tide's doing, and it's very hard to pull yourself away from the estuary.
Well, Barry's been kind of a mentor of mine. I've never had the opportunity really of fishing with him until this trip, and you know, I'm always in and asking him, what are you doing and what's new and what's the latest, and he's always free with his advice, and that is something that has made him special to me, is that he's always free to offer advice. And as I said, I've never fished with him before, but you know, you hear the stories, and when this man comes to stand next to you, well, you may as well wind out, because he's going to catch the fish before you. And that certainly did prove to be true. It is really special. I always like to move with the times and try and use the latest tackle and find the best place to fish. And you know, just spending a couple of hours with the man has been fantastic. And certainly, you know, he's someone that, you know, probably the greatest fisherman that South Africa has produced in the modern era. And you know, he's come from Scarboroughs to machine reels, and now the man's fishing with coffee grinders off the beach and pulling massive fish. So he's setting the trend, and for me it's been a great privilege.
Yeah, so pretty much almost in front of your chalet, in the estuary, you get your live bait. Then you walk up the steps, through the dining room, over the dune, and boom, open ocean.
Just after the kuta smash on the beach here, we thought we'd come back, and maybe it'll happen again this afternoon. The sea's a little bit flat, but we went and caught some little barracuda. These are greater barracuda and some pick handles, and they're very good bait for Spanish mackerel or big kuta. And we've just rigged this with 3 hooks, and we're going to throw it just over the lip in this deep water here, and hopefully we're going to get a big kuta. It's interesting how some people sort of think that things just happen, and it's never ever like that in fishing. Often we'll be out in the boat fishing, but you're already planning your next session, which might be that evening or the next morning, and trying to work out what kind of bait you got, and also what kind of fish you're going to be fishing for. Because here, for example, Lance really wanted to try and get a decent GT off the beach, and we wanted to try and get a kuta. First prize was obviously on spoon, but we were going to try with bait as well. We know that pick-handle barracuda and greater barracuda, the juveniles, are very good bait, so we knew we could catch a couple of those at the back in the estuary here. But also a very good bait is little bonnies or jubes, little frigate mackerel, and we worked quite hard sort of fishing for those baits so that we could go and have some decent bait, and that just makes fishing that much more rewarding when you actually plan the whole thing and it comes together when you eventually land that fish that you've been targeting. But there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Well, as with anything in life, I suppose fishing is it's a matter of personal preference. I've never really been that big into rock and surf angling from the beach. I prefer all the artificial lure spinning, but Barry and Lance in particular are absolutely fanatical about their rock and surf, and already it starts when you're out on the boat. You come across a shoal of bonnies, everyone's vibrating and twitching and itching to get a couple bonnies on the boat to make sure that they got enough bait to slide later in the evening or whatever the case may be. So it's quite an interesting process and to kind of watch, because you watch their minds are starting to work long before they even do that. It's actually unbelievable. I got to experience it with them, and I do it every now and again. It's pretty interesting to sort of stand there and hold the rod and wait for the bite. But I tell you what is amazing is the quality of fish that they actually catch, in that style.
It's amazing when your plan starts coming together or comes together, and our planning of a couple of bonnies and then going into the estuary, getting those pick-handle barracuda, walking down, getting to the beach just as the tide was starting to turn, and later afternoon, sun starting to go down. It's prime time, and the situation called for two different baits. The idea was a rod for Rich, a rod for myself. Rich can't stand holding a bait rod for too long, so he was off spinning down the beach, obviously expecting things to take a little bit longer than what actually happened, because I baited up the first rod, walked down, threw it in, came back, put it in the rod holder, and picked up the next one, and went down, through, and as I walked up, I saw that the first rod that I'd just thrown the line was lying all over the beach. And immediately I knew that something had happened. I thought I'd been bitten off, rewound, and the fish had actually come right into like knee-deep water on the lip. And next minute, there was the GT. The whole plan had come together. It was just absolutely awesome, and the rest of the night was still ahead of us.
Yeah, well, we were obviously hoping for a kuta, but we knew that there was a very good chance that GT would come and eat it. But when it took off like that, as soon as it went sideways down the beach and it just kept going, I knew that it was a GT. A kuta would have actually turned and gone straight out to sea. But it's great to catch a GT right here in front of the camp. I mean, it's awesome.
Rock and surf angling can be, some people would say boring, but in an area like this, it's always interesting because obviously you get the bait, you put the big sticks in the water, you put a line in the water, you put the bait out, and then you put the rods in the pension pipe and the holders, and then you grab your light spinning rod and you start spinning because you never know. There may be a kuta, there may be a bonnie, yellow spot. We've caught a lot of fish off the frontier, so it's always important to be active and make sure that you're covering all your bases. So your bait side of things is covered, and then everybody's spinning, and then they're obviously also spinning with different lures. So yeah, you're covering as many bases as you can.
The one thing about the most recent development in angling, and especially rock and surf angling, is the coffee grinder or fixed bore reel, and it's a little bit like a whole new experience because all the fish that you used to catch before are the same fish that you're catching now. It's just that they start feeling totally different on braid because everything is amplified and basically just magnified. So the whole experience becomes totally different. So there's a lot of guesswork on a lot of species. Once you've caught one a couple of times on braid, it's pretty easy. And yeah, this fish really had me going. Everything just started flashing before me. Big handle barracuda, greater barracuda, GT, kuta, and so it went on. But I guess I should have known from the beginning that it was a big springer because they really, really are strong. And Mozambique is just known for its big springer. You don't catch an awful amount, but when you do, it's a good one. And they're amazing fish. They're really strong. They jump, they cartwheel, you see the splash, you think it's a blackfin. It must be a small blackfin, and then you feel, no, it's got a totally different shake. And yeah, lo and behold, out comes the springer. It was just really an amazing fish to catch that particular evening because I think it started off with me seeing a big white splash as this thing cleared the water when I tightened up on it. So it started off being a blackfin, if I remember correctly, and became a whole lot of other things until eventually it became a springer. A bit difficult to get over the lip, and that was one of the reasons why I thought it might not be a springer, because generally they'll burn off a lot of line and then just come in pretty sedately. This fish was just violent, shaking all the way through the fight. Really amazing fight.
Yeah, very good, a pretty decent springer. With the conditions like they are and some of the sharks that we've actually seen earlier today, Lance is actually we're gonna hook this springer up and swim it as a live bait. I'm almost sure that we'll get a really, really big fish.
Yeah, Lance tried, he put in a lot of time, and normally in most places you would have hooked a shark, but I think that fish was in a position to actually outwit the shark trying to find it, and he possibly stayed just in the right sort of places and kept out of the shark's way. But Lance really enjoyed himself. I could see when we left he was happy to stay there all night just waiting for that fish to come and eat it.
Yeah, after spending a fair bit of time fishing off the beach and with fair success, it was really nice to be back on the boat again.
Okay, well, on the northern side of the reef we found a big shoal of bonnies, and the fish seemed to be hanging around there. So after a few longer drifts, found that it was better to do shorter drifts because that's where all the fish were congregating.
and I'd been throwing the drop shot. I'd been drop shotting for a while, and Morgan was throwing my Rapala Salmo lure, and eventually he got tired and wanted to swap over. And first throw with that lure, I hooked a small marlin, which gave me a serious boxing match.
Tell me, what's he doing? Coming up. Jump, jump you fast. Looks like it. On.
Yeah, the braid was a bit of a problem. I had 80-pound braid on that reel, which was too big for it, so I couldn't get much on the spool. So luckily Morgan was helping me with the boat a bit there.
Let's check. Where is he going? Where's he heading? Okay, see. Jump, you bastard. Jump. 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 Looks like a small marlin. We just saw the dorsal fin sticking straight out. It was going at a very high speed on the surface, and Stella 6000 with 80-pound braid, so there's not a lot of line on there, so we're just trying to keep on top of it so we can manage to get him in.
I knew after the first time it came up to the top, but straight away when I hooked it gave big head shakes. So I was a bit confused. I didn't understand what it was, and then straight away when it came up to the top, I knew. I saw its fin come out.
One of the things that we were hoping to do here was sort of emulate a new, when I say new, it's a relatively new style of fishing, which is jet ski fishing. But what's new about it is the guys are starting to target bigger fish like marlin and big tunny off jet skis. And there's a lot of equipment that suppliers and sponsors sell that's related to that. So we brought along a couple of outfits, and we were hoping to get a small marlin, something around 40 to maybe 140 kilos. And that would have been first prize. We might still do it, but we've used the equipment, we've used a lot of the lures that are made for that type of fishing. And as fishing would go, Gareth hooked the marlin on a stick bait that he had, which looked rather special.
Tired? Yeah, I'm fine. Got a bucket? 2 marlin in 2 days.
Yeah, obviously the guides and the skippers up here are, they're really interesting people. They spend more time on the ocean here than anybody. I think they come into contact with a bunch of different people, and people have different techniques and different lures, and I think they always get left little bits and pieces. And Gareth had this weird looking little lure. I think that he was working, and a really nice marlin jumped onto the end of it, and he fought that thing like a champ for, I'm guessing probably a good 50 minutes to an hour. And I mean, he had it totally under control, and there was not a doubt in any of our minds that he was actually going to get that fish to the boat, and we were going to be able to release it nice and clean. It was fairly close, and after all that toil and tussle, for some reason unknown, the hooks just pulled, and away she went. And after a lot of heartache and sweat, Gareth was left wanting.
I think I actually foul hooked it. I think it went for the lure, had a swipe at it, and hooked it in the side. And eventually, after a while, it just pulled through. The hooks pulled through, and I could feel the whole time I was pulling against the side of the fish. There was a lot of resistance on the line. Been guiding here for almost 3 years now. I've done some work for some of the other guides here in the area, and yeah, just recently I've gone on my own. Got a boat from my dad, which he builds in Zim, and it's a 23-foot power cat, center console, walk around, so there's lots of space for fishing off, very comfortable. And yeah, I'm very chuffed with that, and so far so good.
There we go. Hallo alle mensen, Annika. Doe het wel goed hoor.
Normally as the day wears on, everyone's kind of, especially in a place like Anyati, everyone's sort of aware that, you know, there's going to come a time in the day where the skipper's actually going to just call lines up. So as it starts to get close to that time, everybody, you know, pretty much trying to get that last cast in, hoping that they might get that last special fish of the day. But yeah, you know, when the skipper calls lines up, yeah, you got to respect his judgment call. It's normally about a half-hour steam from where we are. Normally a half-hour steam back to the lodge, and yeah, it's pretty, you know, it's pretty critical that you're making it through the mouth before dark, and inside. Once you're inside the estuary itself, you know, there's a lot of sandbanks, and yeah, you've got to know your stuff. You don't want to be trying to navigate your way around that in the dark. Although the skippers there do have a lot of experience. It's, you know, generally the golden rule is you're always back at the lodge before dark. Yeah, you know, that's just another absolutely amazing day in paradise. Next show, our man BABWE strikes gold off the beach, and then it's out into the deep to witness something really, really special.